World Eyes brings you any educational knowledge or information around the globe, current or many years ago, that has historical or significant value. It is your eyes to the world. Do you know that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has produced two big things that the world should take note? First, it has brought out the best of the Ukrainian people in terms of willingness to fight and die for their country, and has produced a leader that stands by them every step of the way, never bowing out even in the face of certain death. Second, that a neutral Ukraine might be the missing link that could spell out peace in the region and the whole world. I would appreciate if you haven't subscribed to my channel. Please, by all means. Thank you. As the invasion is slowly inching its way to the capital of Ukraine, with Russian tanks and missiles destroying Kiev slowly, the Ukrainian patriotism has swollen into something never before seen by the entire world. Men of all ages, even the elderly, have volunteered to fight for their country. Young women and adults too, as well as the grandmas, have offered themselves to fight and help in whatever capacity they could.
Basic military training at the age of 51. For several months now, Mata Yuskiv has been spending her Saturdays crawling through the ice and mud with a dummy rifle.
A couple planning to tie knot at a future date got married instead as soon as Russia bombarded their country. Yaryana Aryeva, 21 years old, right after marriage, armed herself to fight alongside her husband. People came together, bringing empty bottles to make Molotov cocktails.
Ukraine right now making Molotov cocktails, and it's spread to Kiev. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has issued instructions on how to put them together.
Some help in sandbagging, others work with trenches to slow down Russian tanks from coming in. Even people from neighboring countries have volunteered to fight alongside the Ukrainians. The battle between Ukraine and Russia is a battle between David and Goliath, David being Ukraine and Goliath being Russia. It is a no-match battle, and it is only a matter of time that Russia will be able to subjugate Ukraine. Although subjugation would not easily mean submission, as Russia would have to face unimaginable protracted underground struggle from the Ukrainian people after the invasion, it would be too bad for Russia. Whoever comes out the victor, only time will tell, although the Ukrainian people had vowed to fight and never to surrender. Now, what made President Vladimir Putin of Russia to put down President Volodymyr Zelensky and decapitate Ukraine? It didn't come out of the blue. To Putin, the possibility of Ukraine making it to NATO is the last straw that broke the camel's back. That was enough for him to lose his mind and send more than 100,000 troops around Ukraine. As what Professor John Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago had said, it is not a matter of bad guy and a good guy, with Russia being the bad and the US being the good one. On the contrary, he said, that is not the case, pointing out that NATO and the EU expansion had what pushed Russia to its behavior. Through the years, Putin had swallowed up all that was happening around the Russian borders, like when NATO accepted Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic in 1999, and the admission of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and the other Central and Eastern European countries in 2004. Russia felt betrayed by the NATO expansions, contrary to a verbal agreement reached in 1990 for the Western Alliance not to expand. Some of the countries admitted to NATO had been part of the Soviet Union, gaining their independence only after the breakup. This alone had placed Russia in a very precarious situation. Countries that used to be part of Russia are now the ones threatening its very own security as part of the NATO alliances. As if those were not enough to place Russia on its edge, the 2008 NATO summit in Bucharest announced the possibility of Georgia and Ukraine becoming members. Russia drew a line in the sand and said, that is not going to happen. So, in 2014, Russia made its bold move, took Crimea from Ukraine to prevent the naval base there to be used against them. Russia could not accept the grim reality that troops will be brought into that border once Ukraine becomes a NATO member. Ukraine becoming a NATO member was unthinkable for Russia, like what happened during the Cuban crisis in 1962 when Russian missiles were brought right into the United States' own backyard in Cuba. The US didn't accept that. It placed the whole world into the brink of another war, perceived to be much more catastrophic than the First and Second World Wars. The prospect of Ukraine becoming a NATO member is like putting a dagger into Russia's throat. That broke the camel's back and made Putin ballistic, deploy his troops with the goal of destroying Ukraine completely. It is like saying, we will destroy Ukraine first before it becomes a NATO member. Russia cannot allow someone in her own backyard to stab her from behind. With Ukraine having been invaded by Russia, the possibility of Ukraine becoming neutral to avoid any future conflict in the Eastern Europe doesn't appear anymore to be viable. Like in 1962, when the world had been in the brink of a possible nuclear war, today, 59 years after, the world is on edge again as Putin had irrationally placed his nuclear arsenals into a special combat regime earlier into the invasion, with the backdrop of global sanctions against Russia that saw the rubles plunging down, the stock market crashing tremendously, access to some major banks blocked, and protest rallies all over Russia. Putin finds himself slowly being placed in a box and isolated as what the Western world term an international pariah. Whether Putin remains a calculated and rational man as the invasion continues to unfold, the result of his actions will determine his fate. Who knows, this could be Putin's last concert. Reliving his own experience with rats, when cornered, the rat, he said, will fight back no matter what. And that becomes scary for all of us. And that's for now for World Eyes. Stay tuned on my next vlog. And don't forget to subscribe, please. Thank you.